Today we are making one of my favorite dishes. It is a recipe I'm borrowing from Simply Home Cooked, and we are making creamy Tuscan chicken pasta. So to start, you are going to need a very large pan. Well, I'm making this slightly different than the original recipe because first you are supposed to cook in 2 tablespoons of oil 2 chicken breasts without cutting them first. I'm using chicken thighs. I prefer to cut the chicken raw. That's just what I'm doing today. So I'm going to cut my chicken. I'm using 3 chicken thighs. I'm going to cook them in my pan, and then some may say I'm overcooking my chicken, but I just keep my chicken in the pan for the whole duration of the recipe and it turns out just fine. But either way, cook 2 chicken breasts. I'm using 3 chicken thighs. Get those cooked. I am cooking my chicken over just below medium heat, but make sure your chicken is cooked through, at which point you can take your chicken out, or if you cut it and just don't want to deal with it, you can leave it in the pan like I am. I would recommend salting and peppering your chicken while it is cooking because I like to season my food along the way. Once you have your chicken cooking, it's time to get started on our sun-dried tomatoes. So the recipe calls for an 8-ounce can of sun-dried tomatoes in oil. Now, the very first time I made this recipe, I just took my sun-dried tomato pieces and put them right in my pan. And then it dawned on me once my dish was cooked that it didn't make sense to have them in whole because you just have these big chunks of tomatoes and you don't get little tomato in every bite. So dice your sun-dried tomatoes. And if you want, you can keep that oil and use it to cook with because there's so much flavor in that oil. I feel like it'd be an unfortunate thing to waste. Once your chicken is cooked, if you are going to take it out of your pan, take it out of your pan. And before we move on to the next step, I'm going to get a pot of water over some heat to get the water boiling for our pasta. And then once you have that on the stove starting to heat up, we're going to make our sauce. So in our chicken pan, whether your chicken is in the pan or not, we're going to add 2 tablespoons of butter, our sun-dried tomatoes, 3 cups of baby spinach. I don't think it has to be baby spinach. Baby spinach is just smaller, so when it wilts up, it'll be even smaller. I'm not measuring, I'm just gonna eyeball it. And my spinach may look a little frosty because sometimes when I buy spinach, I know that I may not eat it all and I don't like it to go to waste and get all gross at the bottom of my bag. So I just popped my bag of spinach in the freezer, and so right from the freezer I can add it to a dish that I'm cooking, or I can add it to smoothies. So just a little tip, if you like to use spinach for things like smoothies and cooking and you don't need it fresh and you don't want it to go to waste. So that may look like a lot of spinach, but trust me, it wilts down so much. And if you despise spinach, maybe not if you despise spinach, if you think you don't care for spinach, I recommend still putting it in the dish. You can absolutely leave it out, but the spinach wilts down so much and there's so much flavor in this dish that it overshadows any flavor that you don't care for. So I got my spinach a little mixed in, and while that starts to wilt down, I'm going to mince 2 garlic cloves, and I like to use my microplane because I think it's faster and I like mincing it on the microplane a lot more than trying to dice it up with my knife. So at this point, our heat is on medium. Get everything well mixed together. And once the spinach has wilted, we're going to add the cream. Now this recipe calls for 3 cups of heavy cream. Heavy cream is the same thing as whipping cream, same thing as heavy whipping cream, aka cream. So I love a good cream sauce, but it can be really heavy in my belly. So I am going to do half cream, half milk. I would recommend using at least 1.5 cups of cream because there's flavor that the cream brings to this sauce that you lose the less cream you add in. So 1.5 cups of milk and then 1.5 cups of cream. Now we're going to stir this together and let it come to a simmer. This may take a little while. Give it a stir every few minutes, and keep an eye on it, because once milk starts to heat up and simmer, we don't want to scald the milk. We don't want it to come to a boil. It gets a gross little skin on top. It's just keep your eye on it. Once you get little simmer bubbles, we'll turn the heat off. But while we're waiting for our cream sauce to come to a simmer, my water has boiled. I'm going to salt my water and add a ½ pound of penne pasta. Cook it according to the instructions on your package. And my timing worked out pretty well, getting my penne cooked and having my cream sauce come to a simmer. If your cream sauce simmers before your pasta is done, that's okay. You can just turn the heat off from your sauce, remove your pan from the heat if you're using an electric stove. In the meantime, still while we're waiting for our cream sauce to simmer and our pasta to cook through, we need to shred some cheese. We need a ½ cup of shredded Parmesan. If you accidentally put in more than a ½ cup of shredded Parmesan, I don't think anyone would be mad. All right, so my cream sauce is simmering. I'm going to turn it off, and your cream sauce may not seem thick enough. It may seem too soupy, but it will thicken slightly as it cools, and if you use all cream, it will be slightly thicker. At this point, once you remove your cream sauce from the heat, we're going to add in a ½ teaspoon of salt, a ¼ teaspoon of black pepper, and 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning. Now, I don't love Italian seasoning all the time. It's the thyme. Dried thyme, I don't love so much, but I 100% recommend adding it in. Stir that in, and we're also going to add our Parmesan cheese. At this point, my pasta was done, so I turned the heat off of that, and I am just going to add my pasta right from the pasta water. But at this point, if you took your chicken out of the pan, now is the time to add it back in. Again, if you cooked whole chicken breasts or whole chicken thighs, make sure you have diced them. And part of the reason I am just going to add my pasta right from the pasta water into my cream sauce is because 1, I felt lazy. 2, the powers that be say that pasta water introduces starch to your sauce and helps the sauce stick to your pasta, so I'm just going with it. So go ahead and mix that in. As you can see, this is why it's very important to use a large pan, or else it's just not all gonna fit. Look at how colorful that is. It's not just delicious, it's visually pleasing. And then it's time to serve it up. I will link the original recipe down below in the description, along with all of the ingredients and the instructions. If you guys think this dish would be delicious, go ahead and give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribe for more content, and if you guys are looking for another delicious recipe, go ahead, click on this video here on screen, and I will see you guys there.